In the grim darkness of Warhammer 40K's far future, there is only war, and within this endless conflict, few forces epitomize the stark, unyielding brutality of this universe, like the Death Korps of Krieg. This army is the embodiment of sacrifice, duty, and relentless resolve. Born from the ashes of their own nuclear-devastated world, they are the harbingers of the Imperium's iron will, forged in the crucible of self-inflicted apocalypse. The Death Korps of Krieg, warriors of penance, heralds of doom, and the living embodiment of the Imperium's darkest hour. Inhabiting the vast war zones and scattered across the many battlefields of the 41st millennium, the Krieg's special operations teams take things to a whole other level. Welcome to the Death Korps' mechanized medic unit called Slaughterhouse Five.
The Death Korps of Krieg Quartermaster, with his retinue, is a kit from Forge World that represents probably one of the most grim and utilitarian roles within the Krieg regiments, those responsible for managing the human and material resources of war, where lives are as expendable as ammunition. The Quartermaster is a cold and detached figure, tasked with overseeing the battlefield's grim logistics. His primary role is to reclaim equipment from the fallen, ensuring that nothing goes to waste, not even the lives of his fellow Krieg soldiers. As a representation of the brutal efficiency of Krieg warfare, the Quartermaster carries out executions of mortally wounded soldiers who can no longer serve, a mercy in the eyes of the Imperium, and a grim necessity in the endless wars that define Krieg's existence. The retinue that accompanies the Quartermaster further reflects the dark practicality of the Death Korps mindset. The Quartermaster's field surgeon is a medic, though unlike typical Imperial healers, his role is more mechanical than compassionate, patching up soldiers who can still fight and leaving those beyond hope to the Quartermaster's mercy. He is equipped with advanced surgical tools, his form a mix of biological and mechanical elements, underscoring the cold, clinical nature of his work. The Quartermaster's administratum clerk is tasked with meticulously recording the casualties, resources, and war assets for the Quartermaster, ensuring that every loss is accounted for, and every piece of equipment or fallen soldier is logged and cataloged. In the war-torn universe of Warhammer 40K, where individual lives are expendable and entire regiments are ground to dust in battle, this scribe ensures that the machinery of war continues smoothly, coldly documenting the deaths of soldiers as nothing more than data points in an endless conflict. The clerk's role is symbolic of the Imperium's bureaucracy and its obsession with record-keeping, even in the face of unimaginable carnage. Krieg soldiers, known for their unquestioning sacrifice, are reduced to numbers and resources in the Quartermaster's log, their names forgotten, but their usefulness tallied. This kitbash will also be including a chaplain from the ecclesiarchy and several vehicles to round out the unit. These were all built from third-party models and kits, and you'll see them a bit later in this video. However, this kitbash is not just about the sourcing of various physical models and parts, but also it's a kitbash of stories and ideas. In addition to the lore surrounding the Krieg's Quartermaster and retinue, I will draw heavily on the writings of two authors to inform our journey. Specifically, we will be kitbashing the themes and characters coming from George Orwell's Animal Farm and Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse Five. I find the ideas and themes in these books to spark my imagination, and at least for me, they quickly bleed over into the hobbies of wargaming and miniature painting. Warhammer 40K was developed in the 1980s, a time when the Cold War's shadow loomed large, and Orwellian critiques of authoritarianism were deeply ingrained in Western culture. Vonnegut's existential take on war similarly contributed to a broader cultural reflection on the absurdity of conflict, particularly in the aftermath of both World War II and Vietnam, which could have seeped into the grim, war-torn world of 40k. The grim, dark universe of Warhammer 40k can be seen as an exaggerated, fantastical extension of the dystopian and satirical ideas found in both Orwell and Vonnegut's works. Let's start with Animal Farm by George Orwell, published in 1945. Animal Farm and the Death Korps of Krieg actually share some themes. Particularly for me, they share the theme of authoritarian control, of exploitation of the individual, and the corrupting influence of power. Taking place on Animal Farm, the mantra, "all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others," reveals that the pigs have full authoritarian rule, where they manipulate the truth and impose a rigid hierarchy the other animals blindly accept. The Death Korps of Krieg live under a similar authoritarian structure, directed by the Imperium and the God Emperor rather than corrupt animals. The Krieg soldiers' fanatical loyalty to the Emperor mirrors the loyalty that the animals of the farm give to their pig rulers, even though the system they serve ultimately exploits them. The pigs in Animal Farm gradually adopt the same oppressive behaviors as the humans they overthrew, ultimately becoming indistinguishable from them. In this process, the other animals lose any sense of individual agency, reduced to mere laborers who no longer question the authority of the pigs. Again, similarly, the Death Korps of Krieg are dehumanized through their strict conditioning and war culture. Each soldier is viewed as disposable, bred for a single purpose: to fight and die for the Imperium. They have no personal identities outside their role as soldiers, with their lives revolving entirely around war and service. The dehumanization also echoes the way the animals on the farm lose their individualism, becoming little more than tools for the pigs' goals. In Animal Farm, the pigs, especially Napoleon, the main character, are symbols of the corrupting influence of power and the ways in which revolution can lead to a new form of tyranny. The pig's physical transformation, standing on two legs and adopting human traits, emphasizes how those who claim to represent revolutionary ideals can become the very oppressors they sought to overthrow. In the Warhammer 40k universe, the Imperial leadership could be seen as analogous to these pigs, those who wield power over the masses of humanity. The Imperium's leadership, from the high-ranking Imperial commanders to the Inquisition and the Ecclesiarchy, demands absolute loyalty and sacrifice from its people. Now let's take a look at Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse Five, published in 1969. This book also shares a couple of themes with the lore behind the Death Korps of Krieg. They explore this absurdity of war, the futility of human life under extreme conditions, and the relationship between soldiers and death. Slaughterhouse Five presents war as a chaotic, absurd, and inescapable event where individual agency is almost meaningless. And similarly, the Death Korps of Krieg embrace a fatalistic worldview. Krieg soldiers are born into a culture where death in service to the Imperium is inevitable, and any sense of personal survival or heroism is subordinate to the needs of their collective cause. Krieg soldiers view themselves as expendable in a war that has no true end, much like how Vonnegut depicts war as a senseless loop of violence. The Krieg soldiers accept the absurdity of their existence, marching into battle after battle, knowing that their deaths are inevitable and necessary for the greater goal of the Imperium. Both Slaughterhouse Five and the Death Korps of Krieg examine how war strips away one's humanity. Vonnegut's character, Billy Pilgrim, witnesses the destruction of Dresden and its massive bombing during World War II, which becomes a defining moment in his perception of war's brutal, dehumanizing nature. The destruction of the city is presented as almost inevitable and outside the scope of individual responsibility, emphasizing the way war erases meaning and humanity. And for the Death Korps of Krieg, their entire planet was destroyed in a nuclear civil war, leaving them as products of a devastated world where life is only as valuable in its sacrifice to the Emperor. In Slaughterhouse Five, the phrase, "so it goes," is repeated every time death occurs, reducing it to a mundane, inevitable aspect of existence. This refrain reflects Vonnegut's view of death as a constant, omnipresent part of life, especially during war. There's no grandeur or romanticism in death, just a quiet acknowledgement of its regularity. This attitude is also ingrained in Krieg. For them, death is not a tragedy, but a simple fact of existence. They're trained to die without hesitation, accepting their role as mere cogs in the endless wars of the Imperium. Death in service to the Emperor is the highest honor, and like in Slaughterhouse Five, there is no grand mourning, just an acceptance that death is part of their duty. All right, it's time to meet the Slaughterhouse Five.
Chaplain Orwell grunts orders and slobbers decrees from his mechanized pulpit, pointing to the holy images and messages of propaganda plastered across his machine of manipulation and mayhem. He barks commands to move forward, always forward, only forward, and for the glory of the Emperor, that crackle from the mounted loudspeakers. This is the closest the chaplain ever comes to administering last rites on a Krieg battlefield. So convinced is he that he is doing the God Emperor's work, he wears a bandolier of grenades across his chest, showing all that he is protected from harm as long as his servitude is pure. Directly in front of the chaplain are a formation of 5 Cyclops suicide vehicles that will explode when coming into contact with the enemy. Their welded top caging prevents the odd grenade from prematurely setting one off. The chaplain is flanked by a monolithic armored transport carrying Krieg infantry reinforcements to the front line. This particular transport, called Napoleon, seems to have an enormous pig's head growing out of the front of it. Although, in the fog of war, no one dares to declare with any certainty whether this is a hallucination, a biotech monstrosity, or some kind of conjured dark power. Real pighead or not, this abhorrent abattoir continues to steadily crawl forward, and that's all that really matters. Standing at the rear of Napoleon is Quartermaster Vonnegut, rapidly scanning his immediate surroundings for signs of life. He instructs his field surgeon to revive those wounded who will live another hour to fight. The field surgeon hastily pumps painkillers and stimulants into a soldier's arm, while simultaneously making short work of his mangled leg using a saw blade, cauterizing the stump as he goes. The smell of burnt flesh and blood-curdling screams briefly fill the air. The quartermaster draws his service pistol and fires a single round into the head of a dying soldier. He repeats this action for another. His voice then punctures the roar of machinery and gunfire, ordering Kriegsmen 807 and 808 to exit the armored transport and take their place in the bloody mud. Standing next to the quartermaster is the death scribe, intently documenting it all with the extreme objectivity of a courtroom stenographer. The whirring of spinning cogs in his mechanical backpack constantly produces fresh parchment so as not to miss a single detail as the events unfold. A shell-shocked mortar team hypnotically load rounds into the mounted tube, each round catapulted in an arc that carves a pitted path of upturned earth ahead of the Slaughterhouse Five unit. The continuous shelling affords the nearby Krieg soldiers the added benefit of taking a couple of extra steps before they are shredded by enemy fire. The boar and the goat were chosen to man the mortar because, well, they are tenacious and they are stubborn as hell. Nothing will deter them from jamming an infinite supply of ammunition down the throat of that mortar. Their proximity to these explosive rounds deafened them long ago, leaving only an incessant echo bouncing around the inside of their skulls. repeating, "So it goes, so it goes, so it goes."
The Slaughterhouse Five is a grotesque and allegorical unit within the Death Korps of Krieg, blending the dark themes of Orwell's Animal Farm and Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse Five into the bleak, war-torn universe of Warhammer 40k. Chaplain Orwell, with his pig-like visage, echoes Napoleon's rise to power in Animal Farm, symbolizing the slow, corrupting force of authoritarian rule. His loudspeakers, mounted to a small armored vehicle, blare ceaseless propaganda, urging the Krieg soldiers to sacrifice their lives for the Emperor, just as Orwell's pigs manipulated the other animals to maintain control. The banal cruelty and manipulation of power depicted in Orwell's allegory reflect the chaplain's role, turning duty and death into tools of control. A formation of 5 Cyclops demolition vehicles form the spearhead of the chaplain's advance. Chaplain Orwell was adapted from the torso of a pig in the ramshackle game's Boglander miniature set 3, called the Wereforms, and I glued arms from a Station Forge Grimguard kit, and then mounted him into position in the Machine of Mayhem. Third-party plastic and resin parts were sourced to build up the layers of signage, loudspeakers, and scaffolding. I used AI to generate and then print the propaganda imagery. The Cyclops are from the Warhammer kit, combined with mesh, cage, netting, and structural supports. I sourced the Chaplain's Machine of Mayhem from a 1/72nd scale German World War II Waffentrager AUF E100 kit, leaving off the R1 Missile, of course. The rest of the machine was built up from third-party parts and plastic card. Quartermaster Vonnegut and his grotesque pig-headed vehicle, a direct nod to the absurdist fatalism in Slaughterhouse Five, embodied the indifferent machinery of war that Vonnegut so bitterly criticized. The Forge World Death Korps of Krieg Quartermaster's kit was used for the Quartermaster, the Administratum Clerk, and for the Field Surgeon. The pig's head, fused unnaturally with the steel hull of the transport, represents the fusion of flesh and machine, symbolizing how human lives are consumed and discarded in the industrial meat grinder of endless war. The behemoth of the unit was built out of the 1/35th scale Takom Mark IV Tadpole World War I tank kit. This model, coincidentally, roughly has the same dimensions as a Krieg Gorgon transport, possibly making it a good candidate for proxying. A third-party ceramic pig's head was sourced for the front, and various Krieg accessories were then attached. A platform was added to the back of the tank to extend the standing area beyond the mortar team, enabling the Quartermaster and the Administratum Clerk to also be transported. The mortar team consists of a kitbashed miniature from Knucklebone's Miniatures, called the Fawn, and glued onto a Krieg set of legs. The boar was kitbashed from the body of a Station Forge Grimguard model, and the boar's head came from a bag of plastic animal toys. The Field Surgeon was taken from the Quartermaster kit, and then mounted inside of a 1/72nd scale World War I Flyhawk FH3000 French Renault FT17 light tank kit. The antenna from a Lehman Russ tank accessories kit was attached to the back of the vehicle, and everything was given a red color scheme to signal its purpose on the battlefield. Together, the unit's members, Chaplain Orwell and his Suicide Cyclops formation, Quartermaster Vonnegut, Napoleon the War Machine and its mortar team, the Field Surgeon, and the Administratum Clerk, complete this vision of brutal utilitarian efficiency where individual life is sacrificed without hesitation for the greater war machine. The animal-headed soldiers, linked to Orwell's themes of degradation and betrayal, and Vonnegut's absurd war narrative, drive home the bleak message that in the Death Korps of Krieg, war reduces both man and beast to mere tools of destruction. Their name, the Slaughterhouse Five, is both a tribute to Vonnegut's meditation on the horrors of war and a chilling reflection of the corrupted ideals seen in Animal Farm, where duty, sacrifice, and death become one and the same. If you are new to this channel, This is the third video that I've done in a series on kitbashing my Death Korps of Krieg army. Feel free to check out the others if you want to learn more. And as usual, I've included links in the description to models that might be useful for a kitbash like this. Thanks for watching.